Would you have certified the election results had you been vice president?
If I had been vice president, I would have told the states like Pennsylvania, Georgia, and so many others that we needed to have multiple slates of electors, and I think the U.S. Congress should have fought over it from there. That is the legitimate way to deal with an election that a lot of folks, including me, think had a lot of problems in 2020. I think that's what we should have done.
This is Democracy Watch. Mark, that was J.D. Vance back in February announcing what he would have done if he was in Mike Pence's shoes, which is that he would have allowed Congress to accept fake slates of Trump electors and then put the onus on Congress to decide which to actually approve. Would that effectively mean that if Trump wins and Republicans control Congress, then it's basically just an invitation to submit fake electors, and whoever has the majority in Congress gets to just decide who wins the election regardless of the actual results?
I mean, the good news is J.D. Vance will not be presiding over the special session of Congress next January because he will be a senator, not the vice president. Kamala Harris will be presiding over that proceeding, regardless of the outcome of the election. So I think we are spared this circus, this tragedy, this absolute travesty of a process that J.D. Vance is promising us, right? J.D. Vance is saying what he would have done after the violent insurrection. So we're going to be spared that, but it is a warning for people to realize that whatever else may be going on in politics, whatever else you may be thinking about in politics, the choice this November is whether or not you want to put J.D. Vance in that chair, even if it's not for this January, whether you want to put him in that chair 4 years from this November, for this January.
Well, just as a thought experiment, looking ahead, let's say that, God forbid, Donald Trump does become president, J.D. Vance becomes vice president, and then we are in a situation where the guy who is presiding over the Senate is the same guy who just now said that the issue of whether or not to accept false slates of electors will rest solely with whoever has the majority in Congress.
Yeah. So look, Congress passed a reform law, the Electoral Reform Act was replaced or was modified by a new law that tries to anticipate the worst possible outcomes. Right. It makes clear that the vice president's role is purely ceremonial, is purely ministerial. It increases the thresholds necessary to file objections to the election results, right? So it makes it harder for people to object to the election results. But, and I ultimately supported that law. I ultimately said that Congress should enact that law. But I also made clear at the time, and I want to make sure this doesn't get lost, that law is not the complete solution to saving democracy. That if Republicans want to ignore that law, if Republicans want to violate that law, we will be back into this circumstance about whether or not the courts, and particularly the U.S. Supreme Court, will hold that law binds Congress. And though I think it should, though I think that is the better of the argument, we have seen the U.S. Supreme Court act in ways that are not consistent with what I think a faithful reading of the law and the Constitution are on these big ticket issues involving Donald Trump. So my strong message to voters out there is let's not rely on the Electoral Count Act or the Electoral Count Reform Act. Let's make sure that we are putting into office people who will act responsibly. We are reelecting President Biden and Kamala Harris for another 4 years, so that hopefully this fever can break. Because I think that, again, if we have learned one thing over the course of the last year, it is that Donald Trump will act lawlessly, and the judicial system has had a hard time holding him accountable.
And with that said, just as a quick aside for folks watching right now, the judicial system that is ground zero for a lot of the fights that we're facing, to support the work that Mark and his team do in the courts, which again is could not be more important. Please make sure to sign up for Democracy Docket. It's the free news outlet Mark founded to focus on everything voting and elections. I'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. Mark, is what J.D. Vance is saying here, is his stance basically just that it doesn't even matter what the election results show in this country if you can just submit false slates of electors anyway, and then just give Congress, the few elected representatives in Congress, the final say in terms of who actually wins the elections? Is that the position that that JD Vance is taking here?
I think it's actually worse than that. I mean, I think that if you look at the full scope of what JD Vance and Donald Trump and others are advocating right now, it goes something like this. There are election results. If they are fortunate enough to have an election denier in the county clerk's office or in the county registrar's office who doesn't like the results, those people can refuse to abide by the election results. If they don't have that, but at the state level, they have a state canvassing board that doesn't like the election results and are staffed with election deniers, they can reject the election results. If they don't have that, but they have a MAGA governor, the governor can reject the election results. If all of that fails, then they can go to court and see if they can get a judge to throw out the election results. And if that fails, then Congress can accept a fake slate of electors if they don't like the election results and are controlled by Congress. So what Republicans have done is they've actually given themselves a series of steps where they can simply decide they don't like the election results and ignore them. And for Democrats and for pro-democracy forces, we need everything to line up. We actually first have to win the election. Then we need county officials to do their job. Then we need state officials to do their job. Then we need governors to do their job. Then we need Congress to do its job and the courts to do its job, and then Congress to do its job. That if any step of that way, MAGA is able to get someone in the middle, then all bets are off.
Right. We need 100%. We need perfection, and they just need one person in that long step of people who's willing to subvert the law, and then they get what they want.
Yeah, that is the evil genius of what the Republican Party has laid in front of us. That is the evil genius of people like Steve Bannon, of people like the architects of Project 2025, the people like JD Vance, right? And like the apologists that we see too many apologists for Republicans in the media. This is the dilemma we are in. We are in this very asymmetrical circumstance where for us, we need everything to go right. And for them, they just need one step where they can subvert the election.
Well, back in a May interview with CNN, while we're on the topic of these past interviews that he's given to give us an indication of where his positions lay, Vance was asked if he would accept the results of the 2024 election, and he told Dana Bash that he would accept the upcoming election results only if, quote, we have a free and fair election. But we had that in 2020, where Republicans didn't prove fraud in a single one of the 65 court cases and where there was actually zero evidence presented of any semblance of widespread fraud. And yet, still they claim that it wasn't a free and fair election, meaning that free and fair doesn't actually mean anything to Vance, since we had that and still he claims otherwise. So isn't that him basically just saying that he's never going to accept any results where Republicans don't win?
Look, I want to be as clear as I possibly can be with the audience. Republicans are not going to concede that they've lost any election anywhere. They will say that any election they lost was the result of fraud. We are still litigating the outcome of the 2022 Arizona gubernatorial election, right? I mean, Kari Lake lost that election. She has been told by court after court after court that she lost that election, but yet it continues to litigate forward. There is no chance that Donald Trump, in my view, will ever, not just will he not concede that he didn't lose the overall presidential election. I don't believe Donald Trump will concede that he lost a single state in 2024. They will say that they were cheated in any blue state that votes for Democrats. Right. They will say that they were cheated in California. They will say they were cheated in New York. They will say that they were cheated in Massachusetts. Now, obviously, if they don't win the overall electoral college, then that will be the ultimate election denialism. But I think we need to be clear-eyed that Republicans are setting up a scenario in which any election they lose, any Senate election, any House election, any presidential state, certainly the overall presidential election, they will say it is the results of cheating. Unless you believe that there is internal inconsistency, look at what happened in 2020. In Pennsylvania, at the same time that House members were saying that Donald Trump lost as a result of fraud in Pennsylvania, those same House members were members who had won in Pennsylvania, right? I mean, there's no need for internal consistency here. And so we are in for a very, very rocky fall. And everyone needs to recognize that J.D. Vance is not the extreme of the Republican Party. He is the vice presidential nominee of the Republican Party. So they are not going to accept the outcome of free and fair elections, period, unless they've won.
Let's finish off with this. Are you and other firms who will be charged with litigating these issues prepared for this kind of onslaught that we're about to face in the court system?
Yeah, I don't know that anyone can ever be fully prepared for what Republicans are planning this fall. But here is my message to Republicans. You hate me because I fight. You fear me because I beat you more often than I lose. And just like we stood up to the bullying tactics of Donald Trump and his lawyers and his misfit band of criminals in 2020, we will do it again in 2024. And I am ready.
That's a good little shot of adrenaline right there. With that said, again, for those watching, to support the invaluable work that Mark and his team do, please sign up for Democracy Docket. It's a very small step to help a very important team of people. I'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Mark Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.